The film kicks off in a gritty underground boxing arena. Carter, riding high on his winning streak, is brimming with confidence. However, that bravado quickly fades when Dalton, the notorious tough guy, steps into the ring. The moment Dalton sheds his hoodie, Carter's self-assurance seems to evaporate. It's a winner-takes-all scenario, but Carter, wise enough to recognize he's outmatched, opts to withdraw from the fight. All the cash goes to Dalton, but one disgruntled thug, furious over his lost wager, decides to take matters into his own hands and attempts to stab Dalton. A grave mistake. Dalton barely flinches, standing his ground like a superhero. The thug soon realizes he's in over his head. As Dalton tends to his injury, a woman named Frankie approaches him. She recognizes Dalton and shares her troubles with her bar, which is plagued by rowdy patrons. With the police proving ineffective, she offers Dalton a lucrative position as the head bouncer, promising a hefty salary of $5,000 a week, totaling $20,000 a month. Dalton, however, is filled with uncertainty. Without a phone or a place to call home, his car is a shadow of its former self. Life has worn him down, and for a fleeting moment, he contemplates giving it all up at a train crossing. Just as he decides against it, his car refuses to start, and a train collides with it. Miraculously, Dalton emerges with only minor injuries. Perhaps Frankie's job offer deserves a second thought. Upon arriving in the new town, Dalton encounters Charlie, a girl who runs a bookstore. She and her father guide him to the local bar. When he finally steps into the Roadhouse, the bar's name brings a smile. Billy, the waiter, recognizes him instantly. Dalton has a bit of a reputation. The atmosphere is calm, and Dalton remarks on the tranquility, but Laura, the barista, chuckles knowingly, aware that peace is fleeting. That very night, chaos erupts as a fight breaks out, with bottles and glasses flying and even the live band getting involved. Yet, Dalton remains an observer, choosing not to engage. When a biker gang storms in, Laura senses impending trouble as they begin to wreak havoc. That's when Dalton takes action. He steps outside, playfully tampering with their motorcycles to grab their attention. Once outside, he offers them a chance to leave without conflict, even cracking jokes about their insurance and the distance to the nearest hospital before the inevitable showdown begins. Dalton skillfully evades each punch thrown at him, effortlessly taking down his opponents without breaking a sweat. After the scuffle, he borrows Frankie's car to personally drive the injured bikers to the hospital. Upon arrival, a nurse named Ellie greets him with a sarcastic remark, calling him a troublemaker for bringing in the bikers. She soon spots his own injuries and offers to bandage him up, noting that his makeshift treatment didn't quite hold. Curious, she asks if he ever truly wins these fights, to which Dalton calmly replies, "No one ever wins a fight." As he exits, a group of tough guys eye him, clearly looking for trouble. Back at the Roadhouse, Frankie hands Dalton his weekly pay and invites him to stay at her old boathouse. She playfully warns him about a crocodile that lurks nearby, chuckling at the odd name of the boathouse, just the boat. That night, Dalton is haunted by a vivid dream of his last UFC match as a challenger. Just as the tension peaks, Laura wakes him up with breakfast, sharing her thoughts on the high turnover of bouncers at the Roadhouse and expressing hope that things will change with him in charge. Later on, Dalton makes his way to Charlie's bookstore to use their computer. However, the buzz about his confrontation with the biker gang is already circulating among the patrons. As he browses through the shelves, chaos erupts at a nearby shop when some bikers start stirring up trouble. Charlie, armed with a bat, steps up to confront them. The bikers chuckle at her bravado, but when Dalton emerges, they quickly remember who they're up against and retreat. Gradually, Dalton begins to feel more at home, forging new friendships in the town. Meanwhile, out on a boat, the biker leader, Brandt, is getting a shave while the vessel sways with the waves. Frustration mounts as he realizes his crew can't seem to get anything right. He had enlisted the bikers to intimidate locals and drive them away from their businesses, but Dalton's presence complicates matters. Back at the Roadhouse, another brawl ignites, this time over the music. Dalton seizes the opportunity to teach Billy some valuable lessons. He advises him, if someone pulls a knife, take a step back and keep your distance. Following Dalton's guidance, Billy successfully breaks up the fight. However, when a second round begins, Dalton jumps in to assist before allowing Billy to take charge again. In the days that follow, Dalton continues to mentor Billy, who proves to be a fast learner. He also notices that one of the staff members, Reef, has scars on his knuckles, leading him to deduce that Reef is a boxer. Dalton decides to pair Billy and Reef together as partners to help maintain order at the Roadhouse, allowing him to take a breather. While escorting a drunken patron safely out of the bar, Dalton catches sight of the biker gang lurking outside. They shoot him a menacing glare and vow to return. That night, Dalton is plagued by nightmares from his UFC days, a time when he was unafraid to throw punches or challenge anyone. Now, he finds himself treading more carefully. The following morning at the Roadhouse, Dalton encounters Ellie once more. He can't shake the feeling that the people here are unusually hostile. As they flirt, their relationship begins to evolve beyond mere friendship. After another week of hard work, Dalton picks up his paycheck and makes his way to the boathouse. On his journey, he notices a car slowly approaching him. Suddenly, it accelerates and nearly collides with him, but Dalton narrowly escapes. The car doesn't stop. Instead, it reverses and sends both Dalton and a truck tumbling off the bridge. Although Dalton survives the fall, he returns to find Del, the biker gang leader, waiting for him with a gun drawn. Acting quickly, Dalton flips a table, injuring Del's knees, and throws him into the water. Dalton hopes to resolve the situation without further violence, but Frankie's warning about the crocodile proves true. The massive reptile appears, and let's just say Del becomes its next meal. The following morning, police are out searching for Del's remains, but a local nonchalantly points out that crocodiles often stash their food, making their search futile. Meanwhile, at the bookstore, Charlie shows Dalton a map of the Roadhouse, which raises his suspicions. As he steps outside, a man confronts him, threatening him and insisting that Dalton must get into the car to meet his boss, Brandt. Dalton, ever composed, warns the man that losing his index finger would mean he can't grip his gun. The guy tries to put on a brave face, but Dalton is faster. With a swift move, he ensures that Finger is out of action and coolly states, "If Brandt wants to see me, I'm at the Roadhouse every night." Back at the Roadhouse, Dalton inquires with Frankie about Del and his gang's obsession with the place. Frankie dismisses it, suggesting it's just typical territorial behavior. Meanwhile, the man with the injured finger returns to Brandt, confessing his failure to capture Dalton. Brandt's frustration mounts as his grand schemes unravel, all due to one lean bouncer. Just as he's about to lose his temper, Brandt receives a call from his father in prison. Instead of answering, he hurls the phone out the window and orders the man with the broken finger to retrieve it. Meanwhile, Knox, having enjoyed a wild night, gets a call from Brandt's father, who wants him to step in and clean up the chaos Brandt has created. Knox is eager to take action and heads out immediately. In another scene, Ellie surprises Dalton with her ex-boyfriend's boat and takes him to her favorite picnic spot in the sea. As they chat, Dalton mentions his issues with a guy named Brandt. Ellie reveals that Brandt's family is incredibly wealthy and owns a significant portion of the local land. She starts probing into Dalton's personal life, making him uneasy. He insists she wouldn't want to know about his past, but Ellie already has an idea and isn't bothered by it. Eventually, Dalton opens up a bit more, leading to a deeper connection between them. Meanwhile, Knox makes his grand entrance in town, parking his Ferrari with flair and knocking over a few motorcycles at Brandt's place. He tells the gang that there aren't enough sandwiches for him, as he's quite the eater. When Brandt returns, Knox slaps him, declaring that his father sent him to sort out Brandt's mess and deal with the bouncer issue. Brandt manages to persuade Knox to give him another shot at dealing with Dalton, despite the earlier slap. Later, Ellie takes Dalton back home, only to find police officers waiting to question him about the incident involving Delaware. At the police station, the sheriff warns Dalton to leave town or face dire consequences. Dalton's witty comebacks irritate the sheriff, leading to him being dragged from the car, beaten, and held at gunpoint. Just then, Ellie arrives and slaps her father, the sheriff. She offers Dalton a ride home and reveals that her father was once friends with Brandt's dad. However, after Brandt's father was imprisoned, the sheriff switched allegiances to Brandt. Meanwhile, Brandt is causing trouble at the bookstore. When Dalton returns for his night shift at the Roadhouse, Brandt finally confronts him. Aware that Dalton can't be intimidated or bribed, Brandt mentions having seen Dalton's notorious UFC fight on YouTube, where he fatally punches his opponent. Brandt then releases Knox, and the biker gang storms in. Knox boldly declares the Roadhouse as his territory and begins to wreak havoc, even abducting a woman from her date. Billy and Reef notice the mayhem and attempt to intervene, but Knox knocks Billy out cold and easily takes down Reef. With two bouncers incapacitated, a full-scale bar brawl erupts. Dalton was simply looking forward to a peaceful coffee break, but now he finds himself caught in a chaotic situation. Knox mocks him, claiming he came specifically to confront Dalton. The two square off, with Knox enjoying the advantage thanks to his physical strength and the backing of his gang. Knox delivers a harsh beating to Dalton until his friends intervene. Eventually, Knox drags Dalton outside. Bruised and battered, Dalton rises silently and begins to walk away, just as Ellie and the police arrive on the scene. The Roadhouse is left in disarray. Later, Dalton is at the boathouse, packing his belongings when Frankie finally reveals the truth. Brant is planning to construct an upscale resort, and Frankie is the only one resisting. Initially, Dalton appears indifferent, but Frankie admits her deep fear, something he could never fully understand. Meanwhile, Brant learns that Dalton is still alive while he studies his resort blueprints. As Dalton makes his way to the bus stop, he notices that Charlie's bookstore has been set ablaze. Firefighters inform him that both Charlie and her father have been taken to the hospital. Since Charlie was the first to welcome him to town, Dalton realizes he can't just walk away. He heads directly to Brant's location, where he confronts one of Brant's henchmen, warning him that torching Charlie's bookstore was a grave error. Dalton swiftly crushes the man's trachea, rendering him unable to breathe, and shoves him into the pool. He then reveals his own fear. "I'm scared of what happens when someone pushes me too far, because I know what follows." The man succumbs in the water. As one of the bikers observes Dalton tossing the injured thug into a truck, he quickly divulges the details about Brant's upcoming meeting involving a large sum of money. Dalton tracks down a crooked cop and knocks him out cold. He discovers a suitcase brimming with cash, enough to last a lifetime, and sets the cop up for a murder before knocking him out again. Using a payphone, Dalton alerts the police and the media to the scene. Just as he finishes rigging explosives, Ellie's father arrives, informing Dalton that Brant has taken Ellie and will kill her unless Dalton returns the money. Although skeptical, Dalton agrees to meet with the cash, just in case the threat is genuine. He takes a boat right under the nose of Ellie's ex-boyfriend, who is a cop. Knox makes a dramatic entrance at Brant's estate, but finds it deserted. At Brant's boat, the sheriff lounges, dismissing Ellie's kidnapping as a fabrication until Brant confesses to taking her. "How's that for a twist?" Dalton quips. Brant, furious at Dalton for always interfering, demands his money. Suddenly, Knox appears on the horizon, providing Dalton with the perfect opportunity to detonate the explosives. The blast creates chaos, allowing Dalton to search for Ellie. He finds her locked in a room just as the window bursts open from the pressure. They dive into the water, where Dalton fends off attackers. Ellie manages to board one of the boats, but Brant is already there, taking her hostage and heading to the Roadhouse with plans to destroy it. In the midst of chaos, Knox finds himself in a fierce confrontation with Dalton. Somehow, Dalton manages to board Brant. Just as Knox prepares to strike, Dalton spins the vessel, sending Knox hurtling off. Enraged, Brant turns his boat to collide with Dalton, but Dalton leaps onto Brant's boat just in time. As Ellie and Brant grapple, Dalton takes the opportunity to knock Brant down. The boat capsizes near the Roadhouse, but both Dalton and Ellie manage to escape. Brant survives, but Dalton is resolute in his quest to finish things once and for all. Brant attempts to use a fishing spear, but Dalton swiftly knocks him out. Knox returns for another round, and this time, the fight is even. Dalton puts up a strong fight, but Knox keeps landing extra blows. The intensity of the battle is palpable. Dalton manages to get Knox in a headlock, but Knox retaliates with a stab to his gut. Just as Knox is about to strike again, Brant yells for him to finish Dalton off. Frustrated, Knox decides to confront Brant first, giving Dalton the opening he needs to recover. Using wooden sticks, Dalton ultimately defeats Knox and puts an end to the fight. The sheriff arrives, assuring Dalton that he's covered but needs to leave. Frankie remains optimistic, believing the Roadhouse will be all right. In the closing scene, Dalton's bus pulls up, and as Charlie's dad discovers a case full of money and wishes to thank Dalton, he finds that Dalton has already vanished. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure.